What's up, Amazon sellers? Today I'm joined by Joe Cox and I'm in his office today from E-commerce Accountants, and I'm really excited to obviously have a chance to talk to him about this important subject in person. But hey, he needs no introduction from me. Let's hear from himself. Joe, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone, I'm Joe Cox. I'm the founder and managing partner of E-commerce Accountants, which is an accountancy that specialises in working with Amazon sellers, e-commerce sellers, all the sort of people that will be watching this.
Fantastic, cool, thank you. Thanks, Joe. Obviously great to understand who you are. So in regards to your accountancy practice, can you just tell us a little bit more about that and should we say maybe any areas you specialise in?
Yeah, sure. So the practice itself, I started it about 5 years ago and now there's 23 people in the team. We've got a live audience behind us, a few of them are here. Lucy the dog is also walking around, so hopefully she'll pop up in a bit. And as you can see, we're getting ready for our Christmas party, which you've been invited to.
Thank you.
To answer the question as to, I suppose, what sort of people we work with a range of sellers. So we work with people that are just getting started. Typically those are sole traders, to people that are a bit larger and more established, that have employees on the payroll, usually limited companies. And we've got work with people that are based outside the UK, in the UK, all around the world really.
Fantastic. And I understand obviously you're an e-commerce accountant. What does that mean? Can you explain that a little bit more?
So hopefully, as the name suggests, it means that we work primarily with e-commerce businesses. We do work with some people that aren't online businesses, but usually what you find happens is someone's quite entrepreneurial, they'll start an online business and then they might start investing in property. So then they'll say to us, can we deal with your property portfolio and the tax implications and things like that there. So we'll work with them, those sort of businesses. If someone came into us and they run, let's say, a pharmacy, we would probably say, don't work with us because we don't specialise in it. And you might say, well, do you really need to specialise if you're an accountancy? And because everything ultimately boils down to debits and credits, while yes, that's true, there's kind of advantages to using a specialist because let's take Amazon, for example. The reports that you need to access for that, as an accountant, if a chartered accountant come in that didn't deal with Amazon, they might be able to figure it out, but it would take them so much longer to figure out where to download the reports, which reports they need, then how to actually read the reports and get the data that they need, and then how to take that data and put it into whichever bookkeeping platform you need. So by us specialising, we've kind of done all of that stuff, and then because we do it with every single one of our clients, we kind of get more efficient. And instead what happens for us is when people come to us, instead of kind of coming in and telling their accountant what to do, we kind of tell them, okay, here's the report we need, here's what you need to do. And also with Amazon, as you know, there's a lot of things like VAT that's really technical, and the sort of rules and regulations around it can change based on where the goods are stored, where you sell them to, and someone who doesn't deal with that all the time will have to either research it or they'll have to, or they'll get it wrong.
No, I certainly understand that, and I've spoken to many Amazon sellers who've maybe used different accountancy and obviously come to a specialist such as yourself, and because a lot of accountants don't understand. So thank you for that. I think the question which I'd ask, and obviously the reason why we're here today is if someone's starting out, starting their business, at what point would they need to be thinking about hiring an accountancy? Is it day one? Is it even before they start? What point would that be?
Honestly, the answer is it kind of depends. There's a load of different factors. So first of all, how much of a budget have you got behind you? If you're starting out and you're only planning on spending a few £100s, probably, even if you might need an accountant, you probably couldn't afford one. And if you could, you don't want to spend your money on an accountant where you should be kind of buying products and investing in it to grow. Two would be the kind of size of the business. So if it's very small, less chance you're going to need an accountant. If it's big and you're employing people, if you employ people, you probably will need to get an accountant. But three, on the size of it, when your business approaches the VAT threshold, which is £85,000 of turnover in a year, and turnover is sales. If you are starting to approach that, then you're going to need to be thinking about VAT, in which case then you probably should start thinking about speaking to an accountant. So size of the business, your budget, kind of your tolerance to risk as well. So if you're someone who's really risk averse and you worry about things, making a mistake with HMRC can be costly. If you miss a filing deadline or do something wrong, there'll be penalties, late payment interest. So depending on your risk tolerance, you might want to, some people are very gung-ho and kind of think about the mistakes afterwards. If you're worried, get an accountant first. How much time do you have? So if you've got a lot of time on your hands, some of this stuff you can research, the blog posts on our webpage, like we've spent a lot of time writing them to try and help new sellers. So you can do your own research, but if you're very time poor, then you're probably going to want to engage an accountant earlier, because then you can ask the question, kind of be spoon-fed the answer, and then have it done. And on that note as well, before I forget, for new sellers, we've got a community page on our website. So if you go to our website and go to e-commerce, go ecommerceaccountants.co.uk and go to one of our blog posts, it will link through to our community pages, and people can post questions there. And so we're trying to fill that out so that people don't need to get an accountant as soon, because for us, we'd rather that help people sooner without having to sign them up and charge them money, so that they can grow a bit faster. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Kind of the answer is it depends, basically.
Fantastic. So who have we got here?
This is Lucy Bill.
Hey, Lucy.
She's in charge of bookkeeping.
She seems very happy.
Yeah. And debtors, so when people don't pay their invoices.
So thank you so much, obviously, for letting me know that. So I think the question I'd probably ask you is, most people, should we say, start with, a lot of the customers I speak to, especially in FastTrackFBA, they're really thinking about, maybe they start with a few £1,000s, and maybe they're looking to do one business model. In that kind of situation, when do you normally see that someone would approach you to start, should we say, accountancy services? And again, I would just reiterate the fact that it is dependent, so there's no one size fits all, and obviously to get in contact would be the best thing. But when would they be? What time?
So typically we see the full range. We see people getting in touch with us before they start. Like I said in those points, someone who's really, really risk averse will almost be too scared to start a business without speaking to an accountant. Whereas someone is risk seeking, usually waits until they've missed a filing deadline and gets something in the post, and there's a penalty, then they get in touch. We see the full range.
So Joe, I kind of heard something about a sole trader and limited company. People talk about these. Can you explain what they are? What about them? What are they?
When you're starting out, there's two kind of main entities that you can have as a business. You can be a sole trader, which means that you yourself are the business, or you can be a limited company, which is that the business itself is a separate legal entity. It has its own bank account. If it makes a mistake, the business is the thing that gets in trouble. It's essentially something completely separate to you, the person. If you're starting out, I usually recommend that you start as a sole trader. Even though it might be more tax efficient, in the long run to be a limited company, you can always convert later. If you're a sole trader, you've got lower kind of compliance needs. So you only need to file a tax return once a year, assuming you're not VAT registered and you don't have employees. So you kind of don't really need an accountant as quickly if you're a sole trader, whereas if you're a limited company, there's some extra filing requirements. You as the director probably still need to do a personal tax return. The company itself has to do accounts with Companies House. It will have to do a corporation tax return with HMRC. There's another thing called the confirmation statement that has to be done at Companies House. So there's a lot of stuff that has to be done. So if you're forming a limited company, probably you should get an accountant then. But I would recommend that people wait and kind of make sure the business is working, it makes a profit, and then convert from a sole trade to a limited company.
You can do that, so you can convert from a sole trader to a limited.
That's possible. Yeah. And one advantage, if you have like most people, they're kind of trying to do a side hustle, aren't they? So they've got a job and they're kind of going down this sort of online rabbit hole because they want to have a better life, like you, go off to Mexico and live it up. If you have a job and you're running a sole trade, if the sole trade makes a loss, you can offset the loss against your your salary. So if you are paying tax, you kind of do get a rebate. So it's a good thing if you do make a loss. Better for cash flow, and also if you stop it, you've got a bit of money back. A limited company, you can't do that. So the company makes a loss, but you can't offset that with your other income. So I'd say it's really important if you are starting out, do it as a sole trader until it starts to make a profit, and then speak to an accountant and kind of convert it.
Fantastic, thank you. And so question for you is, I should say side hustles, entrepreneurism, we're a bit risk takers, we're a bit like, we'll do it all ourselves. So can an entrepreneur, or can they not do the accounts themselves? Is that not possible? Do they need an accountant?
Really good question, and they can do it themselves. There's absolutely nothing stopping someone doing their own tax return. I do my own tax return, although yes, I'm an accountant. There isn't anything to stop that. The thing that I would say to people, to encourage them to use, like whether it's us or another accountancy, is that yes, you can learn it. You're very clever people. You've started a business, but you should be spending that time kind of growing your business, not figuring out how to log into HMRC, how to create an account, how to submit a tax return, which boxes to fill in, that sort of thing. Like, you can do it. It's not rocket science. I'm not clever. I've done it. But yeah, you should then spend your time building the business and just pay someone, outsource it, get someone else to do it, and then you spend that time better. So yeah.
Fantastic. So you can do it on your own, but obviously you find a lot of your clients, the reason why they come to you is because time, and obviously it's expertise. And I'm guessing obviously confidence as well, and if they have questions, they can come to the expert and ask you.
Yeah,
fantastic.
I hope they have confidence, yeah.
So quick question for you, another one I'd want to really understand is I'm an Amazon seller myself, and I see it with lots of Amazon sellers. Now, there's software that we use, like profit and loss calculators, call it like seller toolkit, seller board, these kind of like profit calculation softwares. Are they good enough to do our accounting on, or should we be using something else? And if so, why?
Really good question. So the answer is kind of yes. If you're a sole trader, you can use you could use them in theory to get your income and your profit and loss from Amazon. You're still going to have other expenses that you'll need to pick up from your bank. So, the Amazon API doesn't know how much you spent on your accountant, doesn't know how much you spent on web hosting, so many other expenses. So you're going to need to keep that separate anyway. From the income, like the FBA fees, seller fees, all of that, those tools are good enough for a sole trader. For a limited company, it becomes a bit more difficult because it's a bit more technical. The company has to have a balance sheet at the year end, which is essentially a statement which shows all the assets and all the liabilities, basically like where every single penny that it owns is at a particular point in time, which is its year end. A sole trader doesn't have to do that. A sole trader just says how much money they made, how much money they lost, and then shows their profit. And they get taxed on that regardless. The limited company, it gets taxed on its profit, but the owners, so the shareholders, only then get taxed on what they draw from it as dividends usually. So like the company, you kind of need to show where everything's going. And so if you use one of these kind of third-party plugins, it only tells you the Amazon income and expenses. And so it's not good enough for your year-end accounts because there's quite a lot of other moving parts. And another drawback to them that we've found, from playing around with all of these reports so much, is that the API that they usually use, I believe, is the Amazon Orders API, whereas there's quite a few different APIs, but there's the Amazon Finances API. And the Finances API and the Orders API never perfectly matches or reconciles. The Orders API is much easier to use, so a lot of the software providers use that because they can quite easily show you a nice little dashboard that says how much you've made and sold. But the Finances API is actually the one that reconciles or matches up with the money that hits your bank account. So for us, that's a much more accurate kind of report or API to use. So for us, we use Link My Books, but we used to use, we had like our own internal tool. But yeah, so like you basically, you can't use those if you're a limited company. You can if you're a sole trader. I wouldn't. I would still kind of do it our way using the Finances API. So yeah, because we get asked that a lot, because we'll get to the year end and say, this is how much you made. And it might be a few £100s out because their dashboard tool says something different, and they start arguing with us. And you kind of have to say, well, we didn't build the tool. Like, we can't tell you how the tool calculates it, but underneath, but we can show you how our calculations work.
Fantastic, and I think that's a really common one. And the interesting thing you've just kind of shared there is that it's not even simple, it's actually quite complex. Yes, you can if you have personal accounting, but if you're going to be a limited company, it becomes a lot more complex, and even then it's not perfect. So question for you is, if you are not using those tools, you're going to use another tool or another bit of software, what would it be and why?
Question for you. What are you trying to do with that tool?
So say, for example, all we're trying to do now is our accounting. Mm-hmm. So our accounting, so it might be for, should we say, you've expressed already that you can be a sole trader, and you could use the tools, it kind of works, but if you're going to go limited company, what tools would you want to use then?
So, to be honest, if you're a limited company, you can still use those tools as a kind of the owner or the manager of the business to make management decisions, because they're really good for showing you kind of on a daily level how much money you've made, like a very rough and ready approach, right? You can see how much you've made, how much you've lost. And all you need as a business owner really is to be making decisions that are in the interest of the business that are going to make you more money. So I'd still suggest using those, but if you're trying to do your tax return or your accounts, I would say leave that to your accountant and get them to use another tool basically. And so yeah, it depends what you're doing. So if you're trying to do your tax return, don't use it. If you're trying to make a decision, you use them.
Question for you, what would your as an accountant, what would you use with your clients? What tools do they use?
For the sort of
tax returns? Yeah.
Oh, for tax returns? No, so we don't use, we do it behind the scenes, so we don't get our clients involved with that. So we'll get access, secondary user access to their Amazon account directly, and we'll go in and download the reports that we need. This is if they're a sole trader. We'd manually download the reports, and then we've got a macro that we've built that kind of converts all of the data and puts it in a way that's useful for us. If they're a limited company, we connect to Link My Books, and then that pulls the data, every single settlement that comes in, that pulls the data into another piece of software, which is called Xero, and that's a bookkeeping platform where we connect your bank account and everything else. And so we would use that, but we kind of encourage our clients, don't you use it, you're paying us to do it. So we will use it, and yeah.
Fine. So I think the thing you're trying to say between the lines there is other software, but speak to your accountant first before you start trying to play with that, because you'll probably get it wrong and then obviously they'll have to fix it. So yeah. It's not easy, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and essentially if you've got an accountant, you're paying them to do your tax return or your company accounts, they should just go and do that. If you're trying to think, do I need to manage, do I need to purchase more inventory? How many sales did I make today? How much profit did I make? You can get all that information from these other kind of apps, and you don't need to kind of involve your accountant really in that. You can go and do that, and those apps pull data in real time. So you'd use those, but it doesn't matter if it's 100% accurate for your making a decision when, it matters for your tax return, but not for driving the business forward.
Fantastic, thank you. So a question for you, you kind of talked about it earlier on. Obviously you run an accountancy firm, you specialize in e-commerce. I think the question I kind of ask is, why would I need to choose an e-commerce accountant? Could I not just choose, the one that I found down the road? They're a lot cheaper. Why can't I choose them?
You can choose them. Nobody's stopping you. No one's forcing you to use us. The benefit is that we know what we're doing. As I said earlier, if you need to, depending on the bits of software, we know how to use them already, so you don't have to tell us how it works. If you go to a high street accountant and basically before I started e-commerce accountants, I was an Amazon seller myself, and I was an accountant, and I would go to, I wanted to engage in accountancy because I wanted to kind of live what I say, which is, outsource it. And I would explain to them, I'd say, I'm buying goods in China, I'm importing them into the UK, USA, Germany, storing them in these warehouses and selling them on Amazon. And they kind of didn't understand it. And then you say, okay, well, here's my Amazon account, kind of you deal with it. And then, well, how do I deal with it? And then you'd have to kind of tell them. And I'm not saying all accountants are like that, and especially if some have got some experience with it. But really, if you're working with someone, do you want to have to tell them what to do? And if you're telling them what to do, are you going to be confident in what they're doing? Or are you going to work with someone like us who knows what we're doing? We tell you what we need, how to do it, and yeah, that's the main benefit, really.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, because I certainly know it when I first started looking for an accountancy before yourself, contacting lots of accountants, and I was talking about, I sell on Amazon, they're like, yeah, we can kind of do it, and the moment you hear that kind of like, kinda, you're like, do you really know what you're doing? Because like, I understand basic accountancy, and this is like, there's a lot more challenging parts to it, so.
Yeah, and I'd also say to be wary, because it's been, I think, since the start of the pandemic, there's been a lot of accountants that were suddenly like, oh, this e-commerce thing, that's the place to be, right? Oh, we'll just say we specialize in it. And as Chris will tell you, who's working over there, like there was one competitor who sprung up about 1.5 years ago, and they were doing Google ads, so they were getting loads and loads of clients because we organically rank for #1 on Google, but all the paid ads go above us. And these guys, they looked kind of legit, signed loads of clients up, had no idea what they were doing, and then what we found basically like 1 year later, when all of this work started piling up on them, they've kind of just collapsed, and then they've made so many mistakes, and basically like Dan at Link My Books had to get in touch and was just like Joe, we've got all these businesses from this other like accountancy, they need to go somewhere, like have you got capacity, can you do it? And so yeah, we took them all on, and like all these clients were fuming because this other accountancy just couldn't deal with it, made all these mistakes. We then had to correct all the mistakes. So I'd just say beware, like make sure that they know what they're doing. Yeah.
And is that, not in regards to that accountancy, is it a common thing that you see with maybe people just starting a business? They might go for a non-specialist e-commerce accountant, because obviously price, they're going to find that local ones are probably going to be cheaper, and then maybe the next year they might go, actually there was real problems with them, and hence they come to you. Is that something that you see quite often?
Yeah, I mean, most people are price sensitive when they're looking around, especially when they're new to something. It's completely understandable. And it's something we kind of struggled with as a firm, because originally we tried to make sure we tried to work with everyone, so we would keep our prices low, especially at the really low level. But what we then found is you just physically can't help everyone. And so we effectively charge a premium. We're more expensive, at least I hope we are more expensive than our competitors. And there is value in it, like the time we save and the headspace that we save, it's worth it. If you work with another accountant, like it could work. Like there are smart people that other places may figure it out, but there's definitely like that risk, and you're going to have to not only, although you save cost, you might not save on time and headspace.
Okay, so thank you so much. I think the one thing which I'm really seeing from this is that, you said it depends. There's so many, it's not clear cut, it's not crystal. Yes, you can do it by yourself. Yes, you can use another accountant, but it's going to be more work, it's hard. And I think there's one thing you said which I'd really resonated with me, especially in my own Amazon journey, was the fact that, yes, you can do it yourself, but at the end of the day, you probably make more money than it's going to cost to pay you to do it, by growing your business. And that's where you add value, and I believe that.
Yeah, and I suppose the one final thing I'd say on adding value that we say to people that are like considering signing up with us, especially when they're price sensitive, is, well, look, how fast do you want to go? Like what you're getting from paying more money, working with us, because we know what we're doing, we can get you, if you're trying to get from A to B, you want to get your business to a certain position, we can get you there faster because you can focus on it. Whereas if you work with some of the ones that are much cheaper, you will get there. If you work hard, you'll get there, but you just might not get there as quickly. So it depends, yeah. But how quick do you want to go?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Thank you. So you talked about it earlier on. You talked about you've got a community page that can help people just starting out. Obviously, they can ask questions, but also you've got blog posts as well. Where is this? What's the site, if you want to share it?
So our website's ecommerceaccountants.co.uk. Cool. I'm going to give you the community link afterwards. It's like community.ecommerceaccountants.co.uk, something like that. I'll say it wrong, so I'll give it to you afterwards.
Fantastic.
But yeah, people are welcome to sign up there, and we monitor it.
And if anyone obviously is interested and wants to, should we say, maybe see if they're going to be a right fit for you, and obviously you're a right fit for them, what's the process? Tell me about that.
So the process, we've made it slightly difficult to get in touch with us because we try and put a lot of content out there to help people, because ultimately so the process that happens like this: you go on our website, you complete a form, so you're in our CRM. So then we'll then arrange a call with you if you're the right fit, and being in the system means we can take notes and things like that. If you decide, so we'll have a discovery call, which is essentially like 15-20 minutes where you can ask any quick questions. We'll explain how we work. If we're a good fit, we'll send you for a proposal outlining all of the costs. We try and be as transparent about that as possible up front. If you're happy, sign up, starts the onboarding process. You'll deal with my colleague Hannah, who's sitting around there. And yeah, if you've got a previous accountant, I'd suggest telling them first if you're moving. But the process there is known as professional clearance. We write to them. They have to send, if they're regulated like we are, they have to send all the documents to us. And we arrange an orderly and kind of fast transfer. So yeah, it's quite a straightforward process to get in touch. But the main thing is we removed our telephone number from the website, because what we found was people were phoning us and then trying to get kind of ahead of the queue. And we basically need people to follow a process so that we can kind of manage the number of people that get in touch with us and make sure that we help.
Cool. Well, thank you. What I'll do is I'll make sure there's a link down below to all of everything we talked about today. So like the blog post, the community, and obviously how to get in contact, obviously through that process that Joe's just talked about. So Joe, I just want to say thank you so much for your time. Also thank you so much for sharing, and appreciate. It depends. Yes, you can. No, you can't. It's never an easy question. I think, go through the process, find out if it's going to be a right fit for both of you, and also even use that community post. That's going to really help out, just get people to understand. And I'm guessing there's a lot of history there, so people can read what other people have written in the past. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's relatively new, the community pages, but we're trying to use them more, and we encourage people to ask questions. No questions are bad questions. And for us, if it's something that's completely new, we'll either do a video or make a whole new blog post on it. So for us, it's good to give us those questions. And for you, you'll get the answer without having to necessarily sign up with an accountant. And obviously, if it's already there, we can just give it to you. Yeah, thanks for having me. Fantastic. Thank you very much.